So, you find a home you want to buy. Now what? Well, it's time to write an offer, but what does that even entail? I'm going to answer that question in this video where I talk about the 5 most important elements of a purchase contract. Hey there, my name is Parker Gray and I am a real estate agent right here in Kalamazoo, Michigan. I wanted to make this video because I'm very passionate about providing information to buyers and sellers in the real estate market so you can be more educated when it comes time to actually buying or selling a home. Now, before I get into the video, I just want to reiterate I'm only covering the 5 most important elements of a purchase contract in my mind because it would be too much to cover them all, not to mention the fact that things are going to vary a little bit depending on where you live. Don't worry though, a great real estate agent is going to make sure that you understand all of the elements of a purchase agreement, but it's still good to know these key elements because you want to make sure that you are ready when it comes time to buy that home of your dreams. So starting with number 1 is going to be the sales price. Now, the sales price is the most important part of an offer because after all, this is how much you are telling the seller that you are willing to pay for their home. The specific amount of money you may choose to offer is going to depend on things like a buyer's versus a seller's market, how long the home of interest has been on the market, etc. Now, if you have a question about those things and need some insight as to what you should offer, be sure to have a conversation with your real estate agent because they should be educated on all of these different factors and they should be able to help you determine what would be a suitable asking price for a specific home. Now, of course, when it comes to the purchase price, you want to write an offer that gives you the best chance of negotiating a deal as well as getting the best terms possible for your situation. And that brings us to number 2, which are the financing terms. The reason this is so important is because depending on how you're purchasing the property, that's going to be a very important consideration for a seller when they decide whether or not to accept your offer. Now, usually somewhere in the purchase contract, it will have you specify the type of financing that you're using or if you're paying cash, but the way that you actually show the seller that you're able to pay for the property is either with a pre-approval letter, which will be issued by your lender, or with a proof of funds letter if you are paying cash. Side note, you should find out what you can afford before you actually start looking for a home. I would hate to be showing a client property and find out at the last minute that they can't actually afford what they thought they could, and now they have no ability to write an offer and get that house of their dreams. Speaking of financing terms, that brings us to number 3, which is closing costs. So first of all, what even are closing costs? Well, to make it simple, closing costs are just miscellaneous fees that come with buying a home that you are liable to pay for at closing. Generally, they amount somewhere between 2 to 5% of the purchase price of a home. Now, don't get this confused with a down payment. A down payment is a percentage of the sales price that you are paying forward at closing. The closing costs are actually going to be in addition to the down payment of your home due at closing. Now, the amount of money a seller can actually contribute towards your closing costs will depend on the type of loan that you have. So just be sure that you talk to your lender to make sure you understand exactly how much a seller will be able to contribute if you're planning on asking for closing costs when you write an offer. And that brings us to number 4, which is earnest money. Now, earnest money is actually a deposit that's made when a seller accepts your offer that shows good faith that you intend to actually purchase their home and abide by the terms of the purchase contract. Now, the earnest money deposit is usually somewhere between 1 and 2% of the overall sales price, but it really is up to you and perhaps your agent to determine what a suitable earnest money deposit would be for a specific home in question. And don't worry, that money is not a cost to you. It sits in what is known as an escrow account, which is a neutral third-party account from which that money will be applied towards your closing costs and your down payment when you actually sit down to close on your home. Now, speaking of closing, that brings us to number 5, which is going to be the closing day. Now, every single offer is going to have to include a closing date or a date range that is acceptable for you to close depending on the contract. Now, you can't just close right away. Throughout the course of a transaction, there are several contingencies that need to be met before you can actually close, and I'm sure that I'll make a video in the future covering those things. But it's important to understand that the bank is going to need time to process your loan and to actually get a clear to close in order for you to be able to purchase the home. So generally speaking, the rule of thumb is that it takes about 30 to 45 days to actually close on a home with traditional financing, and that date range is going to vary depending on the type of financing that you have, along with some other extraneous factors. Of course, again, it's a really good idea to talk to your lender and your agent to make sure you understand how long it will take for you to be able to close, and then suggest a proposed closing date accordingly when you actually write your offer. Now, sometimes there may be extenuating circumstances that make the initial closing date not possible, and usually your contract will spell out a way for you and the seller to renegotiate that closing date in order to make sure that you keep that contract together. And that just about does it for my 5 most important elements of a purchase contract. If you enjoyed the video, please go ahead and hit that subscribe button and hit the notification bell as well so you can get notified every time I come out with a new upload. And of course, if you are in the Kalamazoo area, or anywhere in Southwest Michigan for that matter, and you are thinking about buying or selling a home, please feel free to reach out to me. I would be happy to have a conversation with you and see if I can't help make that happen. Thanks again for watching. Have a great day. We'll see you next time. Take care.